In a distant corner of the galaxy, humanity clung to its place like a fragile leaf caught in a cosmic storm. Earth was no longer the center of anything. It hadn't been for centuries. To most advanced civilizations, humans were little more than an oddity, a species that had clawed its way out of the dirt but still lacked the refinement and discipline of true interstellar powers. Among these superior beings were the Zoroastrians, an ancient insectoid race whose empire spanned hundreds of star systems. Their queen, known as Xylithis, ruled with cold precision, her decisions guided by logic and efficiency rather than emotion or mercy. The Zoroastrians saw humanity as insignificant pests at best, amusing curiosities, at worst, annoyances to be exterminated if they ever posed a threat. Humans, after all, were unpredictable creatures. Their emotions ran wild, their societies fractured into countless factions, and their technology lagged far behind what the Zoroastrians considered civilized. Yet despite this dismissive attitude, something about humanity unsettled the Zoroastrian leadership. It wasn't fear, it couldn't be, not from such a mighty empire, but there was an unease, a sense that perhaps these chaotic beings weren't entirely worthless. It began on a routine exploratory mission. A small human scout ship named Eos ventured deeper into uncharted space than any vessel before it. Its crew of 5 consisted of scientists, engineers, and one brave pilot named Captain Ilara Voss. They carried no weapons. Earth's military leaders believed their best chance for survival lay in diplomacy rather than aggression. For weeks, the Eos drifted silently through asteroid fields and nebulae, searching for signs of intelligent life beyond Earth's borders. Then came the discovery. Hidden within the shadow of a dying star, the crew detected faint energy signals, emanating from a structure unlike anything they'd seen before. It was sleek, angular, and pulsing faintly with bioluminescent light, a Zoroastrian research outpost cloaked in secrecy. As the Eos approached cautiously, scanning for threats, its sensors picked up movement inside the facility. Before anyone could react, the ship's communication system crackled to life, broadcasting a single message: Asterisk, they're not alone. Asterisk, the transmission ended abruptly, leaving only static. But worse yet, moments later, the Eos vanished without a trace. Back on Earth, news of the lost scout ship spread quickly. Governments convened emergency meetings, debating whether to send reinforcements or abandon hope altogether. Public opinion swayed between fear and fascinations. Some called for immediate retreat, while others argued that humanity needed to prove itself capable of standing among the stars. Amidst the chaos, a young astrophysicist named Dr. Ethan Cole refused to give up. He had worked closely with the crew of the EOS and knew their mission better than anyone else. Determined to uncover the truth, he pieced together fragments of data recovered from the last transmission. What he discovered sent chills down his spine. The phrase "they're not alone" didn't refer to the Zoroastrians themselves. It hinted at something else, something far older and more dangerous lurking in the shadows of the universe. As Ethan presented his findings to a skeptical council of world leaders, tensions reached a boiling point. Some dismissed his theories as paranoia, while others whispered about potential alliances with the Zoroastrians. But one thing became clear: humanity's future depended on understanding the mysterious forces at play, and fast. And then, just when hope seemed lost, another twist emerged. Deep space monitors detected a massive fleet approaching Earth's solar system. At its head loomed a colossal vessel adorned with jagged spires and glowing runes, the unmistakable flagship of Queen Xylithis herself. Panic swept across the globe as humanity braced for invasion. But instead of launching an attack, the Zoroastrians issued a demand: surrender your leaders, or face annihilation. No one understood why the Zoroastrians would bother negotiating with such inferior beings, or why their arrival coincided so perfectly with the disappearance of the Eos. All anyone knew was that the fate of humanity now rested on the shoulders of those willing to step forward and confront the unknown. Did they realize that this encounter would lead to something far stranger and far more personal than anyone could have imagined? For when Captain Ilara Voss reappeared days later, dragged before Queen Xylithis, under circumstances no one could explain, she found herself pinned against a wall, staring into the alien monarch's piercing eyes, and in a voice both commanding and eerily calm, Xylithis spoke words that froze everyone in their tracks. Asterisk, you want peace, human? Then marry me. Asterisk, time seemed to stop. Confusion rippled through the gathered crowd. mingling with disbelief and dread. How had this happened? Why would the queen of an unstoppable empire propose such an absurd solution? And most importantly, how would humanity respond? For the first time in history, Earth held its breath, waiting to see what came next. The room was silent except for the faint hum of alien machinery. Captain Alara Voss stood frozen, her back pressed against the cold metallic wall, as Queen Xylithis loomed over her. The queen's towering form, 7 feet tall, with shimmering armor and glowing green eyes, was both mesmerizing and terrifying. Her voice echoed through the chamber, sharp and deliberate, leaving no room for argument. Asterisk, you want peace, human? Then marry me. Asterisk. Ilara blinked, struggling to process what she had just heard. Marriage to an alien queen. Was this some kind of cruel joke? She glanced around the room, searching for answers, but all she saw were rows of Zorathian soldiers standing motionless like statues, their insectoid faces unreadable. Behind her, a holographic screen displayed Earth's blue-green orbit, reminder of everything at stake. Summoning every ounce of courage, Alara finally found her voice. Your Majesty, she began hesitantly. I don't understand. Why would you ask this of me? Xylithis tilted her head slightly, a gesture that might have been curiosity or amusement. You humans are chaotic, unpredictable creatures. Your emotions cloud your judgment, yet somehow, they also drive you to survive where others would fail. My advisors tell me your species is unworthy of alliance, but I see potential in you. Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Potential. What did that even mean, coming from someone who viewed humanity as little more than pests? Before Ilara could respond, the doors hissed open, and a group of humans entered the chamber. They were diplomats, sent by Earth's leaders, men and women, chosen to negotiate on behalf of their planet. Among them was Dr. Ethan Cole, the astrophysicist who had analyzed the EOS's final transmission. His face was pale, but his eyes burned with determination. Queen Xylithis, one of the diplomats, stammered, stepping forward. We humbly request clarification regarding your proposal. The queen turned her gaze toward the newcomers, her expression unreadable. Clarification, she repeated, her tone icy. Very well. Humanity has 2 options. Submit to my rule entirely, or allow one of your own to unite our species through marriage. This union will ensure peace not just between us, but across the stars. A murmur rippled through the group of humans. Some looked horrified, others confused, but none dared speak up. It was clear that refusing outright would mean war, and humanity wasn't ready for that fight. Not yet. Ethan stepped forward, breaking the tense silence. Forgive me, Your Majesty, he said carefully, but why choose marriage as a solution? Surely there are other ways to achieve peace. Xylithis regarded him coolly. Marriage symbolizes trust, unity, and commitment to all things your kind lacks. If humanity wishes to prove itself worthy of existence among the stars, then it must demonstrate its willingness to adapt. Do you refuse? Her question hung in the air like a blade poised to strike. Refusal meant certain destruction. Acceptance meant entering uncharted territory. Either way, humanity stood on the precipice of change. Alara broke the silence, surprising everyone, including herself. If I agree, she said firmly, meeting the queen's piercing gaze, what happens next? For the first time, Xylithis seemed genuinely intrigued. You surprise me, human. Most of your kind would cower or protest. Very well, if you accept. We shall bond according to Zorathian tradition. You will become part of my court, learning our ways while representing your people. In return, I will grant Earth protection and access to resources beyond your imagination. The offer sounded tempting, almost too good to be true, but Ilara knew better than to trust blindly. And if I refuse? She asked quietly. Then, your world burns, Xylithis replied without hesitation. There was no malice in her voice, only cold certainty. The weight of the decision pressed down on Ilira's shoulders. She glanced at the assembled humans, seeing fear, hope, and desperation reflected in their eyes. Finally, she turned back to the queen and spoke with quiet resolve. Give me time to think. To everyone's astonishment, Xylithis nodded. You have until dawn. Choose wisely. Captain Voss. Back aboard the human delegation's ship, chaos erupted. The diplomats argued fiercely, divided between those who believed accepting the proposal was madness and those who thought it was their only chance at survival. Ethan tried to mediate, but his mind kept returning to Ilara's predicament. How could anyone make such a monumental decision overnight? Meanwhile, Ilara sat alone in her quarters, staring out at the stars. Her thoughts raced. Could she really sacrifice herself for the sake of billions? What would life as the Queen's consort even look like? Would she lose her identity, her humanity? As the hours ticked by, Ethan knocked softly on her door. When she let him in, he found her pacing nervously. "You don't have to do this," he said gently. "There has to be another way." Ilara shook her head. "Does there? We're outmatched. Ethan, if I say no, Earth dies. If I say yes—" She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. Maybe saying yes doesn't mean giving up. Maybe it means finding a way to turn this situation to our advantage. You're smart. Could learn their weaknesses, find a way to level the playing field. His words sparked something in Ilara, flicker of defiance. Perhaps this wasn't just about submission. Perhaps it was an opportunity disguised as captivity. By the time dawn arrived, Ilara had made her decision. Standing before Queen Xylithis once again, she squared her shoulders and met the alien monarch's gaze head-on. "I accept your proposal," she said steadily. "But no, this Psy won't stop being human, and neither will my people." For a moment, Xylithis simply stared at her, her expression unreadable. Then, to everyone's shock, the corner of her mouth twitched almost like a smile. "Interesting," she murmured. "Perhaps humanity isn't quite as primitive as I thought." With those cryptic words, the Queen extended a clawed hand toward Ilara. Taking it felt like stepping off a cliff into the unknown. But deep down, Ilara knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. The days that followed, Ilara's acceptance were a blur of alien rituals, ceremonies, and lessons in Zorothian culture. Queen Xylithis wasted no time integrating her new consort into the royal court. Every waking moment was filled with tutors explaining the intricacies of Zorothian society, warriors teaching combat techniques, and advisors outlining protocols for addressing the Queen. To the humans watching from afar, it seemed as though Ilara had been swallowed whole by the alien empire. Yet she refused to let herself be broken. Ilara quickly realized that surviving this arrangement would require more than just obedience. She needed to understand the Zorothians, not just their customs, but their motivations, fears, and weaknesses. The Queen's offer of peace hadn't come out of kindness. It was strategic, calculated. And while Xylithis viewed humanity as chaotic and unpredictable, Ilara began to see cracks in the Zorothian facade. For all their technological superiority, they were rigid, almost mechanical in their thinking. They valued logic over emotion, order over creativity, and that rigidity might be their undoing. One evening, after hours of grueling instruction on Zorothian history, Ilara found herself alone in her quarters. Her room was luxurious by human standards, adorned with shimmering fabrics and glowing crystals, but it felt like a gilded cage. She stared at the holographic image of Earth projected onto the wall, a reminder of why she had agreed to this madness. As she traced the outline of the continents with her finger, a soft knock interrupted her thoughts. It was Ethan somehow. He had managed to secure permission to visit her under the guise of delivering updates from Earth's leaders. His presence was a lifeline, a connection to the world she had left behind. He entered cautiously, his eyes scanning the room before settling on her. "How are you holding up?" he asked quietly, closing the door behind him. Ilara forced a smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. "As well as can be expected. I'm learning a lot about them, more than I ever wanted to know." Ethan nodded, pulling a small datapad from his pocket. "I brought something for you. It's not much, but—" He hesitated, then handed it to her. On the screen was a series of diagrams and notes detailing the layout of the Zorothian flagship, along with observations about its defenses and vulnerabilities. Ilara's breath caught in her throat. "Where did you get this?" "We've been piecing it together based on scans and intel from the EOSS last transmission," Ethan explained. "We don't have enough to plan an attack, not yet, but if we can find weaknesses—" Ilara shook her head firmly. "No attacks, not now. If they catch wind of anything like that, it'll blow everything." "But," she paused, her mind racing, "this could still help. There's more to these aliens than meets the eye. Their technology is advanced, sure, but their mindset is brittle. They don't adapt easily. If we play our cards right, maybe we can use that against them." Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Ilara said slowly, "that they underestimate us. They think we're weak because we feel emotions, because we're messy and imperfect. but those things make us stronger, not weaker. We need to show them what being human really means. Over the next few weeks, Alara began subtly working to shift the balance of power. During her lessons, she asked probing questions about Zorothian governance, exposing contradictions in their policies. In council meetings, she spoke up when others expected her to remain silent, offering insights that surprised even Slowly but surely, she earned a measure of respect among the Queen's advisors, though whether it was genuine admiration or wary curiosity remained unclear. One day, during a demonstration of Zorothian military prowess, Alara noticed something peculiar. The soldiers moved with precision, each step choreographed to perfection. But when one of them stumbled slightly, a rare mistake, the entire formation faltered. It was only for a split second, but it revealed a flaw. The Zorothians relied heavily on predictability and routine. Any deviation from the norm threw them off balance. Alara filed the observation away, knowing it could prove invaluable later. For now, she focused on building alliances within the court. She befriended a young Zorothian officer named Kelith, who seemed unusually curious about humanity. Unlike most of his kind, Kelith asked questions instead of dismissing humans outright. Through him, Alara learned about dissenting factions within the Empire groups who questioned Xylithis' methods and resented humanity's sudden prominence. "You're different from what I expected," Kelith admitted one evening as they walked through the ship's gardens. The air smelled faintly metallic, tinged with the scent of alien flowers. "Most humans are afraid of us. You challenge us." Alara smiled faintly. "Fear doesn't solve problems. Sometimes, you have to stand your ground even if it feels impossible." Kelith tilted his head, his insectoid features making it hard to read his expression. "Do you truly believe this marriage will bring peace?" "I don't know," Alara admitted honestly. "But I do know that giving up isn't an option. If there's a chance to change things to make both our species better, then I'll take it." Her words lingered in the air between them, unspoken possibilities hanging heavy. Kelith didn't respond, but his silence spoke volumes. Back on Earth, tensions continued to rise. News of Ilarus' agreements spread across the globe, sparking heated debates. Some hailed her as a hero, willing to sacrifice herself for the greater good. Others called her reckless, accusing her of playing into the Zorothians' hands. Amidst the chaos, Ethan worked tirelessly to rally support for Alara's mission, urging humanity to prepare for whatever came next. Meanwhile, aboard the flagship, Alara faced her greatest challenge yet. Queen Xylithis summoned her to the throne room late one night, her tone leaving no room for delay. When Alara arrived, she found the queen pacing restlessly, her claws clicking against the floor. "Tell me, human," Xylithis demanded, without preamble. "Why does your kind cling so desperately to hope? Even when faced with annihilation, you refuse to surrender. Why?" Alara met the queen's gaze, her heart pounding. "Because hope is what keeps us alive. Without it, we'd lose ourselves. Hope reminds us that no matter how dark things seem, there's always a way forward." Xylithis studied her intently, her glowing eyes unreadable. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, softly, the queen said, "Perhaps there is more to your species than I believed." It wasn't quite approval, but it was progress. And for Alara, that was enough. The turning point came unexpectedly, not with a grand battle or dramatic declaration, but in the quiet moments of vulnerability that exposed the cracks beneath the surface. Alara had been living aboard the Zorothian flagship for months now, and though she had earned a fragile foothold within their society, every day was a delicate balancing act. She walked a tightrope between earning trust and avoiding suspicion, all while searching for ways to tilt the scales in humanity's favor. One evening, as the ship drifted silently through the void of space, Queen Xylithis called Alara to her private chambers, a rare invitation that carried both privilege and peril. When Alara entered, she found the queen seated on a raised dais, surrounded by glowing crystals that pulsed faintly in sync with her breathing. The atmosphere felt heavy, charged with an unspoken tension. "Sit," Xylithis commanded, gesturing to a low platform across from her. Her tone was softer than usual, almost contemplative. Alara obeyed cautiously, unsure what to expect. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched taut, broken only by the faint hum of the ship's engines. Finally, Xylithis leaned forward, her luminous green eyes locking onto Ilaras. "Tell me about loss," she said, abruptly. "What does it mean to your kind?" Alara blinked, caught off guard by the question. Loss, she repeated, buying herself time to think. It means pain, grief, but also resilience. We mourn those we've lost, but we carry their memory with us. It shapes who we are. Xylithis tilted her head slightly, her expression unreadable. You speak of carrying memories. Do you believe they give you strength? Yes, Ilara replied without hesitation. They remind us why we fight for the people we love, for the future we want to build. Even when things seem hopeless, remembering what we stand to lose keeps us going. The queen stared at her for a long moment, then looked away, her gaze distant. I have never understood such attachments. To cling so fiercely to something that is already gone. It seems inefficient, a waste of energy. But isn't that what makes life worth living? Ilara countered gently. If we didn't care, if we didn't feel, then what would be the point? Your people value logic and order, but sometimes chaos and emotion create beauty too. They make us human. Her words hung in the air, lingering like a spark waiting to catch fire. For the first time since meeting Xylithis, Ilara sensed a flicker of doubt behind the queen's steely exterior. Perhaps there was more to this alien ruler than met the eye, more fragility, hidden beneath layers of armor. Days turned into weeks, and Ilara continued to push boundaries where she could. During council meetings, she subtly challenged outdated Zorathian policies, pointing out inefficiencies and proposing alternative solutions. Her suggestions were often dismissed outright, but occasionally, one of them stuck, earning grudging acknowledgement from the advisors. Slowly, she began to gain traction, not just as a figurehead, but as someone whose opinions mattered. Meanwhile, tensions simmered among the Zorothians themselves. Kelith, the young officer who had befriended Ilara, confided in her late one night about growing unrest within the empire. Dissenters were becoming bolder, questioning Xylithis's leadership and criticizing her decision to align with humanity. Some even whispered of rebellion. They see you as a symbol of weakness, Kelith admitted quietly, his voice tinged with frustration. To them, bringing a human into the royal court undermines everything our people stand for. And what do you see? Lara asked, studying him closely. Kelith hesitated before answering. I see potential. Change is difficult, but it's necessary if we're to survive. Humanity challenges us in ways we haven't faced before, and maybe that's exactly what we need. His words gave Ilara hope, but they also underscored the precariousness of her position. If factions within the Zorathian Empire turned against her, or worse, against Xylithis, fragile peace she had worked so hard to build could shatter overnight. Back on Earth, Ethan and the rest of humanity braced for the unknown. News of growing dissent within the Zorothian ranks reached them through intercepted transmissions, sparking heated debates among world leaders. Some argued that now was the time to strike, to take advantage of internal divisions and reclaim autonomy. Others urged caution, warning that any aggressive move could provoke retaliation. Ethan sided with the latter group, advocating for patience. We can't afford to act recklessly, he told the council during one particularly contentious meeting. Ilara is playing a long game, and we need to trust her. Pushing too hard too soon could ruin everything. But trust wasn't easy to come by. Public opinion remained divided, with protests erupting in cities around the globe. Some citizens hailed Ilara as a savior, others branded her a traitor. Amidst the chaos, Ethan worked tirelessly to rally support, reminding everyone that humanity's survival depended on unity, not division. Then came the moment that changed everything. During a routine inspection of the flagship's engineering bay, Ilara stumbled upon something extraordinary. A hidden chamber filled with ancient artifacts and holographic records detailing the Zoathians' origins. Among the relics was a map showing the location of a mysterious planetary place referred to only as the Cradle. According to the records, it was the birthplace of the Zorothian species, a sacred site abandoned centuries ago. After a catastrophic event, Ilara's heart raced as she pieced together the implications. The Cradle wasn't just a historical curiosity, held secrets that could reshape the balance of power, secrets that might explain the Zorothians' obsession with control and perfection, and if she could uncover those secrets, she might find a way to bridge the gap between their two species. When Xylithis discovered Ilara snooping in the forbidden chamber, the queen's reaction was swift and severe. She summoned Ilara to the throne room, her claws clicking angrily against the floor. You dare trespass where you are not welcome, she demanded, her voice cold and sharp. Alara stood her ground, meeting the Queen's glare with unwavering resolve. "I wasn't looking for trouble," she said calmly. "I was looking for understanding. Your people have history, traditions, flaws just like mine. Maybe confronting those flaws is the key to moving forward." For a moment, Xylithis seemed torn between anger and intrigue. Then, slowly, her expression softened. "You continue to surprise me, human," she murmured. "Perhaps there is wisdom in your chaos after all." It was a small victory, but it marked a seismic shift. For the first time, the Queen began to question her assumptions, not just about humanity, but about herself. And as the pieces fell into place, Alara realized that the real battle wasn't fought with weapons or strategies. It was fought in the hearts and minds of those who dared to imagine a better future. The discovery of the cradle changed everything, or at least, it had the potential to. Alara knew that uncovering its secrets could be the key to bridging the gap between humans and Zerothians, but she also understood the risks. The cradle was sacred ground for the Zerothians, a place shrouded in myth and taboo. To even suggest visiting it was tantamount to blasphemy. Yet, as days passed, and tensions within the Empire continued to rise, Alara realized she had no choice but to push forward. Queen Xylithis remained conflicted about the idea. On one hand, she recognized the value of exploring their origins. On the other, she feared what they might find. Her advisors were equally divided, some urging caution while others argued that reclaiming the cradle could restore unity to the fractured empire. In the end, it was Alara's persistence and her unshakable belief in the power of understanding that swayed the Queen. "We've spent centuries running from our past," Alara said during a heated council meeting. "But you can't build a future without facing where you came from. If we go to the cradle together, human and Zorothian, we might discover something that brings us closer instead of tearing us apart." Her words resonated with Kelith, who had become an unlikely ally in her quest. Together, they convinced Xylithis to authorize a small expedition to the cradle. The mission would include only a handful of individuals: Alara, Xylithis herself, Kelith, and a few trusted soldiers. It was a risky move, fraught with danger, but it was also an opportunity, a chance to rewrite history. As the flagship approached the coordinates marked on the ancient map, anticipation crackled through the air. The planet loomed ahead, cloaked in swirling mists and jagged mountains that seemed to pierce the sky. From orbit, it looked both beautiful and forbidding, fitting reflection of the emotions swirling within the crew. When they landed, the team stepped onto soil untouched by sentient life for millennia. The air was thick with an eerie stillness, broken only by the distant hum of alien machinery buried beneath the surface. As they ventured deeper into the ruins, guided by faint energy signatures, Alara couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. Shadows danced at the edges of her vision, and whispers echoed in a language she didn't recognize. Xylithis walked beside her, her usual composure replaced by a quiet unease. Even she seemed affected by the weight of this place. "This is where it began," she murmured, running a clawed finger over a weathered carving etched into a stone wall. "Our ancestors built this world before abandoning it. They sought perfection, but perfection came at a cost." "What kind of cost?" Alara asked softly, her voice barely audible over the wind. Los Xylithis replied after a pause. "They sacrificed emotion, creativity, individuality, all the things that made them unique in pursuit of order. And when they succeeded, they lost themselves." Alara felt a pang of sympathy for the Queen, seeing glimpses of vulnerability beneath her hardened exterior. She wondered if Xylithis saw parallels between her own leadership and the mistakes of her ancestors. Perhaps that was why she had hesitated so much about returning here. Their journey took them to a massive underground chamber, its walls lined with pulsating crystals that cast shifting patterns of light across the floor. At the center stood a towering obelisk covered in glowing runes. As Alara approached, the runes flickered and shifted, forming images that told the story of the people, their rise, their fall, and their eventual exodus. But there was more. Hidden among the runes were warnings about the dangers of rigid thinking, of rejecting chaos and emotion entirely. One phrase repeated itself over and over: *balance is strength. Alara turned to Xylithis, her heart pounding. "This isn't just your history, it's a lesson. Your ancestors tried to erase everything that made them human, or whatever you call it, and it destroyed them. You don't have to make the same mistake." For a moment, Xylithis said nothing, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly, she nodded. "Perhaps you're right," she admitted quietly. "Perhaps balance truly is strength." Back on Earth, Ethan monitored the situation anxiously. Communication with the expedition had been spotty since entering the cradle's atmosphere, leaving humanity in suspense. Protests continued worldwide, with factions arguing over whether Ilara's mission was a triumph or a betrayal. Amidst the chaos, Ethan worked tirelessly to keep hope alive, reminding everyone that Ilara's actions were rooted in courage and conviction. Meanwhile, aboard the flagship, dissent reached a boiling point. Factions opposed to Xylithus's alliance with humanity seized control of several outposts, declaring independence and threatening rebellion. Messages poured in from across the Empire, demanding answers and action. When the expedition returned from the cradle, they found the flagship under siege. Rebels had surrounded the vessel, cutting off escape routes and demanding surrender. Xylithus faced a stark choice: fight back and risk civil war, or negotiate peace and risk losing her authority. Ilara stepped forward, addressing both sides via holographic broadcast. "This isn't about domination or submission," she declared, her voice steady despite the tension. "It's about survival for all of us. Humans and Zorathians may be different, but we share the same universe. If we let fear and hatred divide us, none of us will survive. But if we work together, if we embrace our differences, we can create something greater than either of us alone." Her words resonated deeply, not just with the rebels but with ordinary citizens watching. From afar, slowly, the tide began to turn. People started to question whether conflict was inevitably or if coexistence was possible. As the standoff unfolded, Xylithus watched Ilara with newfound respect. For the first time, she saw not just a human, but a leader, a symbol of resilience and hope. And in that moment, the Queen realized that the real battle wasn't against enemies outside. It was against the doubts within. The climax was building, pressure mounting like storm clouds ready to burst. Humanity's fate hung in the balance, and every decision mattered. But Ilara refused to give up. Not now, not ever. The standoff aboard the flagship reached a fever pitch, with both sides teetering on the edge of violence. Rebel forces had surrounded the vessel, their weapons trained on the hull, while inside, tensions ran high among the crew. Queen Xylithus stood at the center of the command deck, her exoskeletal armor gleaming under the dim lights. But even she seemed uncertain for the first time in her reign. Her advisors whispered frantically, urging her to retaliate, to crush the rebellion before it spread further. But Xylithus hesitated, torn between maintaining control and risking everything for peace. Ilara knew this was humanity's moment, the moment to prove that chaos wasn't weakness, it was strength. She turned to Xylithus, her voice calm but firm. "Your Majesty," she began, "you've spent centuries ruling through fear and order. But what has it brought you? Division, rebellion, a people who no longer trust their leader. If you want to save your empire, protect Earth, then we need to show them another way." Xylithus stared at her, her glowing green eyes narrowed. "And what would that other way be?" "Human trust," Ilara replied without hesitation. "Not just from you to them, but from all of you to each other. Let me speak to them. Let me show them that humans aren't enemies, we're partners." For a long moment, Xylithus didn't respond. Then, with a flick of her claws, she activated the ship's communication system, broadcasting Ilara's image across every screen and frequency within range. The rebels watched as Ilara stepped forward, flanked by Xylithus and Kelith, her face resolute yet compassionate. "Listen to me," Ilara said, addressing the rebels directly. "I know why you're angry. You feel betrayed by your queen, by her decision to align with humanity. You think we're weak, chaotic, unworthy, but I'm here to tell you that you're wrong. Humans aren't perfect. We argue, we make mistakes, we stumble, but we never stop trying, and neither should you." Her words resonated deeply, cutting through the anger and mistrust like a blade. Across the galaxy, millions tuned in to watch not just Zerothians, but humans too, glued to screens as they witnessed history unfold. "We're not so different, you and I," Ilara continued, her voice rising with conviction. "You value logic, efficiency, unity, but those things don't have to come at the cost of emotion, creativity, or individuality. Those qualities make us stronger, not weaker. Together, we can build something greater than either of our species could achieve alone." As she spoke, Kelith stepped forward, adding his own voice to hers. "She's right," he said. his tone steady despite the weight of his words. "We've been clinging to the past, afraid to embrace change. But if we keep going down this path, we'll destroy ourselves just like our ancestors did. It's time to choose a new way." The rebels wavered, uncertainty rippling through their ranks. Some lowered their weapons slightly, muttering amongst themselves. Others remained defiant, unwilling to yield. But then, something extraordinary happened. Single rebel soldier stepped forward, removing his helmet to reveal a scarred but determined face. "I've fought against humans," he admitted, gruffly, his voice carrying over the cums. "I've seen them as enemies. But Captain Voss, she's different. She doesn't back down. She fights for what she believes in, not with weapons, but with words. Maybe there's something to learn from that." His declaration sparked a chain reaction. One by one, more rebels began lowering their weapons, murmuring agreements. The atmosphere shifted palpably, the tension easing like storm clouds parting after rain. Even Xylithis seemed taken aback, her rigid posture softening ever so slightly. Back on Earth, Ethan watched the broadcast with bated breath, surrounded by world leaders and scientists, in a secure command center. When the first rebel lowered his weapon, cheers erupted in the room. Humanity had gambled everything on Alara's courage, and she had delivered. But the breakthrough didn't end there. Inspired by Alara's speech, Xylithis made an unprecedented move. She addressed her people once again, this time speaking not as a distant ruler but as someone willing to listen and adapt. "For too long," she admitted, her voice tinged with vulnerability, "I have ruled with an iron claw, believing that order was the only path to survival. But Captain Voss has shown me another truth, that balance is strength, that chaos and logic can coexist." Her admission sent shockwaves throughout the Empire. Never before had a Zorathian monarch acknowledged fallibility or embraced change so openly. For many, it was a revelation. The divide between loyalists and rebels began to blur as both sides realized they shared common ground. Elara seized the opportunity, proposing a joint initiative to explore the cradle further. "Let's uncover the secrets of your past together," she urged. "Not just Zorathians, but humans too. Let's learn from each other and build a future where neither of us has to sacrifice who we are." The idea struck a chord. Within days, teams of humans and Zorothians were working side by side, studying the ancient ruins and deciphering the runes. Each discovery brought new insights not just about the Zorothians' origins, but about the universal truths that bound all sentient beings. They found evidence of art, music, and storytelling among the Zorothians' ancestors, things thought lost forever. These remnants of creativity reminded everyone that imperfection wasn't a flaw. It was a gift. By the time the expedition returned to the flagship, the rebellion had dissolved into negotiations. Leaders from both factions agreed to form a council, one that included representatives from Earth. It was a fragile peace, held together by trust and mutual respect, but it was a start. Keleth approached Elara later that evening, his expression thoughtful. "You've changed everything," he said quietly. "Not just for my people, but for yours too." Elara smiled faintly. "No, Keleth, we've changed it together. That's the point." As she looked out at the stars, she felt a sense of hope she hadn't dared to imagine when this journey began. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, humanity and the Zorothians were walking it together. And somewhere deep inside, Alara knew that this was only the beginning. The galaxy would never be the same after what had transpired. The fragile peace brokered aboard the Zorothian flagship marked not just an end to conflict, but the dawn of a new Irenara defined by collaboration, understanding, and shared purpose. Humanity, once dismissed as insignificant, now stood shoulder to shoulder with one of the most powerful empires in the stars. It wasn't perfect. There were still disagreements, moments of tension, and challenges yet to overcome. But for the first time, both species saw each other not as adversaries, but as allies. Elara stood on the observation deck of the flagship, gazing out at the endless expanse of space. Beside her, Queen Xylithis joined silently, her towering form casting a faint shadow across the floor. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then, finally, Xylithis broke the silence. "You have accomplished something I thought impossible," she said, her voice softer than usual. "You've united two peoples who once viewed each other as enemies. How did you do it?" Elara turned to face the queen, her expression thoughtful. "It wasn't me alone. It was everyone, the humans who trusted me, the Zorathians who listened, even those who doubted us along the way. Change isn't easy, but when people come together, when they choose hope over fear, they can move mountains. Xylithis nodded slowly, her glowing eyes reflecting the starlight streaming through the viewport. Perhaps that is why your kind fascinates me so much. You are unpredictable, chaotic, flawed, and yet somehow beautiful because of it. Her words carried weight, a rare acknowledgement from someone who had spent centuries dismissing humanity as unworthy. Alara felt a swell of pride, just for herself, but for all of humanity. They had proven their worth, not through brute force or technological superiority, but through resilience, creativity, and heart. Back on Earth, the impact of Elara's actions rippled outward like waves on an ocean. Cities erupted in celebration as news of the alliance spread. Monuments were erected in her honor, songs were written about her courage, and schools began teaching lessons on diplomacy and unity inspired by her example. Ethan watched it all unfold with quiet satisfaction, knowing that Elara's sacrifices had paved the way for a brighter future. But the real transformation occurred beyond Earth's borders. Joint human-Zorthian research teams scoured the cradle, uncovering treasures of knowledge that reshaped both civilizations. Ancient technologies were adapted to solve pressing issues like resource scarcity and environmental collapse. Stories of the Zorathians' ancestors' art, music, poetry were shared openly, bridging cultural divides and fostering mutual appreciation. One discovery stood out above the rest. A hidden chamber deep within the cradle contained records of a long-lost experimenter project to merge biological and synthetic life forms. Though incomplete, these records hinted at possibilities far beyond anything either species had imagined. Together, humans and Zorathians began exploring this concept, laying the groundwork for advancements that could redefine existence itself. Months later, Alara found herself back on Earth, standing before a crowd gathered in Central Park. The event was billed as a global celebration of unity, and representatives from dozens of worlds attended, including Kelith and several high-ranking Zorathian officials. As Alara stepped onto the stage, cheers erupted, echoing off the skyscrapers surrounding the park. She raised a hand, and the crowd fell silent. "Today," she began, her voice carrying clearly despite the enormity of the audience, "we celebrate not just peace, but possibility. We've shown that differences don't have to divide us, they can unite us. By embracing our flaws, our emotions, our chaos, we become stronger. And by working together, we create something greater than any one of us could achieve alone." Her speech earned thunderous applause, but it was the final line that lingered longest in the minds of those present. Hope isn't just a feeling, it's a choice. A choice to believe in a better tomorrow, no matter how dark today may seem. As fireworks lit up the night sky, painting the heavens with streaks of gold and blue, Alara slipped away from the festivities. She wandered through the quiet streets, until she reached a small overlooking the city skyline. There, she found Ethan waiting for her. "You've changed the world, Alara," he said simply, handing her a cup of coffee. "What's next for you?" She smiled, sipping the warm drink as she gazed at the glittering lights below. "I don't know yet. Maybe I'll stay here, help rebuild Earth, or maybe I'll keep exploring, seeing what else is out there. Either way, I'm ready." Ethan chuckled softly. "Whatever you choose, you'll always be remembered, not just as a hero, but as someone who reminded us what it means to be human." Alara didn't respond immediately. Instead, she looked up at the stars, twinkling like diamonds scattered across velvet. Somewhere out there, the Zorathian Empire continued its journey, forever altered by the events of the past year, and somewhere closer to home, humanity took its first steps into a larger universe, guided by the lessons they'd learned. As the wind rustled through the trees, Alara whispered to herself, almost too quietly for anyone to hear, "The best adventures aren't about where you go, they're about who you become along the way." And with that, she turned back toward the city, ready to face whatever came next.